There's something almost electric about holding an ancient talisman, a small, unassuming object that somehow feels heavier with meaning than it does with weight. Run your fingers over its surface, and you're tracing lines carved by hands long gone, symbols that once held the power to protect, heal, or even curse. These aren't just artifacts collecting dust in museums. They're fragments of a forgotten language, a language that spoke to the very fabric of reality for those who knew how to listen. Across cultures and millennia, from the amulets of Egypt to the rune stones of the Vikings, these objects were believed to channel forces beyond human understanding. And here's the thing, they still do. Even now, in our age of science and logic, we're drawn to them, as if some part of us remembers their power. What if I told you that the symbols etched into these talismans aren't just decorative? They're blueprints, codes left behind by ancient minds who understood energies we're only beginning to grasp today. Take the Eye of Horus, for example. To the untrained eye, it's a simple depiction of an eye, but to the Egyptians, it was a shield against evil, a conduit for divine protection. Or consider the Celtic knots, endless loops with no beginning or end, symbolizing the eternal cycle of life and the interconnectedness of all things. These designs weren't arbitrary. They were meticulously crafted to tap into something greater, something alive. And the most fascinating part, modern researchers are now discovering that these symbols might have roots in sacred geometry, patterns that resonate with the very structure of the universe itself. So why do these ancient talismans still hold such a grip on our imagination? Maybe it's because they remind us that there's more to this world than what we can see and touch. They whisper of a time when magic wasn't just fantasy, it was a tool, a science, a way of navigating the unknown, and that's exactly what we're going to explore together. Over the course of this journey, we'll decode the hidden meanings behind these symbols, uncover the rituals that brought them to life, and maybe, just maybe, rediscover a piece of that lost wisdom. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, one thing's for certain, by the end, you'll never look at these ancient artifacts the same way again. So let's begin. Long before written history, humans were already shaping the natural world into objects of power. The earliest talismans emerged from a primal need, not just to understand the unseen forces around us, but to interact with them. Picture this: 30,000 years ago, a Paleolithic hunter carefully carving a bare tooth into a pendant, believing it would grant them the animal's strength. Or a Neolithic farmer burying a clay figurine in their field, convinced it would whisper to the earth for a bountiful harvest. These weren't superstitions, they were humanity's first experiments in shaping reality. The ancient Egyptians perfected this art like no other civilization. Their scarab amulets, shaped like dung beetles, might seem humorous today until you learn they symbolized the sun god Khepri, who rolled the sun across the sky just as beetles roll balls of dung. To them, this wasn't just symbolism, it was sacred mimicry, a way to harness celestial power in the palm of your hand. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, the Mesopotamians were pressing cuneiform prayers into clay tablets, creating what might be history's first instruction manuals for talismans. These weren't generic spells, they were personalized, like ancient prescription pads written by priest-physicians who doubled as spiritual pharmacists. But how did these practices cross oceans and mountain ranges? Trade routes became conduits for more than spices and silk. They carried ideas. Phoenician merchants spread Egyptian amulets throughout the Mediterranean, while the Silk Road transported Buddhist mantra charms from India to China. Each culture remade these objects in their own image. The Viking Age transformed Roman coin amulets into Thor's hammer pendants. and African tribal markings evolved into the protective sigils of the American South's hoodoo tradition. This wasn't cultural appropriation, it was adaptation, as communities discovered universal truths in different wrappings. Perhaps most astonishing is how these ancient concepts echo in modern science. Quantum physicists speak of entanglement particles mirroring each other across vast distances, while traditional healers describe this same connection between a talisman and its wearer. Archaeologists have found Babylonian demon traps nearly identical to Jewish mezuzahs, proving that the human instinct for protection transcends time and creed. What our ancestors called magic, we might call psychology or energy work today, different languages for the same profound truth, that symbols shape our reality, whether carved in stone or imprinted in our minds. Think of symbols as the alphabet of the unseen world, each one a letter in a cosmic language that transcends time and culture. The yin-yang doesn't just sit there looking balanced. It teaches balance, whispering the eternal dance of opposites into the minds of those who contemplate it. The ankh isn't merely an Egyptian fashion statement. It's a key, a visual shorthand for the breath of life itself. These symbols are like mirrors, reflecting universal truths that different cultures have polished in their own unique ways. But here's where it gets fascinating. When a symbol stops being just an idea and becomes a tool, that's when it crosses into talisman territory. A talisman is a symbol with a job. It's not content to sit on a scroll or a temple wall. It rolls up its sleeves and gets to work. Take the Viking runestone carved with the Alges rune. On paper, it's a simple shape resembling a person reaching skyward, a symbol of divine connection. But when that rune is etched into a warrior's amulet before battle, it transforms. Now it's a living contract with the universe, a concentrated burst of energy programmed for protection. This is why ancient rituals often involved charging talismans, whether through moonlight, incense, or blood in the case of some Norse traditions. The symbol provides the blueprint, but the talisman is the constructed house ready for occupancy. The magic happens literally when these two elements intertwine. Medieval grimoires are filled with pages where symbols like the pentagram or the seal of Solomon aren't just drawn, they're activated with layers of intention. A 14th century magician might spend hours inscribing a planetary sigil onto a silver pendant, then bury it during a specific moon phase to lock in its power. Compare that to a modern athlete wearing a hamsa hand necklace for luck. Same principle, different packaging. What both understand instinctively is that the symbol channels the energy, but the talisman directs it, like a lightning rod grounding celestial electricity into tangible results. This duality explains why some objects seem to radiate energy while others feel inert. A tourist shop dreamcatcher dangling from a rear-view mirror, probably just a symbol. But one woven by a grandmother with specific prayers for each knot, that's a talisman humming with purpose. The difference isn't in the materials, but in the relationship, the moment a shared cultural idea becomes a personal pact. That's why archaeologists find amulets buried in Roman childbirth rooms inscribed with "Fortune, go forth," or Hawaiian warriors carrying carved Omakua charms believed to hold ancestral spirits. These weren't decorations, they were spiritual technology. So the next time you trace your fingers over an ancient symbol, ask yourself, is this a philosophy lesson or a power switch? Because understanding that thin, shimmering line between representation and invocation is how we begin to speak the language of the old magic, one where every curve and line might just be a door waiting to be opened. Imagine looking at a snowflake under a microscope, each delicate branch, each perfect angle, repeating in flawless symmetry. Now zoom out to the spirals of a galaxy. the unfurling petals of a rose, even the double helix of your own DNA. What you're seeing isn't just beauty, it's the silent language of the cosmos written in geometry. The ancients didn't just stumble upon this language, they studied it, revered it, encoded it into talismans as if these shapes were divine signatures. The flower of life, a pattern of overlapping circles found in Egyptian temples and Chinese temples alike, isn't just art. It's a map, a blueprint for creation itself, echoing the way cells divide and galaxies spin. Plato was onto something profound when he called geometric shapes the building blocks of reality. His theory wasn't just philosophy, it was a hands-on guide. He linked the tetrahedron to fire, the cube to earth, the octahedron to air, the icosahedron to water, and the dodecahedron to the heavens. These weren't poetic metaphors, they were instructions. When you hold a Sri Yantra, that intricate interlocking triangle design from Hindu tradition, you're holding a machine. Its precise angles are said to generate a measurable energy field, pulling abundance or enlightenment toward the meditator like a spiritual magnet. Modern experiments with cymatics, the study of visible sound vibrations, show that these same geometric patterns emerge when frequencies hit a plate of sand. Coincidence or proof that the ancients knew how to tune reality? The Great Pyramid isn't just a tomb, it's a geometric powerhouse. Its base-to-height ratio mirrors the golden mean, the same proportion found in seashells and human faces. Step inside and the chambers align with celestial events down to the minute. Builders didn't have laser precision tools, yet they encoded mathematical constants like pi into the stone. How? Maybe because they saw geometry not as calculation but as communion. When a medieval alchemist drew the seal of Solomon, two overlapping triangles, they weren't doodling. They were creating a circuit, a way to balance elemental forces. Even today, engineers borrow from sacred geometry when designing everything from antennas to healing spaces, because certain shapes simply conduct energy better. So why does this matter to someone holding a talisman? Because geometry is the bridge between the symbol and the power it claims. That Celtic knotwork isn't just pretty, its endless path traps negative energy like a labyrinth. The Islamic star patterns adorning mosques aren't mere decoration. Their repetition induces a trance state, a doorway to the divine. When you wear a pendant with these designs, you're not just carrying a charm. You're carrying a tuned instrument, vibrating with the same frequencies that structure everything from atoms to star clusters. The difference between a doodle and a sacred symbol. One is drawn, the other is aligned. Perhaps the most tantalizing question isn't whether these geometries hold power, but how they do. Science is beginning to catch up. Studies show that certain shapes can affect water's molecular structure or alter brainwave patterns. But the ancients didn't need labs to prove it. They felt it in their bones, saw it in the tides and the seasons, and carved that knowing into stone and metal. So next time you see a mandala or trace the lines of an ancient sigil, remember, you're not just looking at a pattern, you're staring into the operating system of the universe waiting to be rebooted. King Solomon's ring wasn't just jewelry, it was a divine remote control, said to command demons and whisper the language of animals. Imagine a monarch so wise that even the wind supposedly paused at his gesture. That's the power legends ascribed to his seal, a six-pointed star often etched into metals or parchment. But here's what's fascinating. Across the Mediterranean, the same symbol appears on protective amulets in Jewish, Islamic, and even early Christian traditions. Whether called the Star of David or the Seal of Solomon, its reputation for bending unseen forces to the wearers will span millennia. Modern archaeologists have found versions of it scratched onto doorways in Pompeii, tucked into medieval medical texts, even woven into the belts of Ottoman warriors. That's not mere superstition, it's cultural endurance. Then there's the Hand of Fatima, that elegant palm-shaped amulet you've spotted in markets from Marrakech to Madrid. More than just a pretty charm, it's a spiritual lightning rod. In Moroccan folklore, it deflects the evil eye like a mirrored shield, while in Shia tradition, it represents the 5 holy figures of the Prophet's household. But the real magic lies in its duality. The same hand that wards off harm also beckons blessings, a perfect metaphor for how talismans often balance opposing forces. Spanish conquistadors carried it to the Americas, where it merged with indigenous protection symbols. Today, you'll find it on car dashboards in Tel Aviv and tattooed on arms in Rio, proving that a good talisman never goes out of style. Alchemy's Philosopher's Stone takes the cake for sheer ambition. Medieval labs across Europe and the Middle East burned with the quest to create this mythic substance, part medicine, part wealth generator, part key to immortality. German alchemist Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa wrote entire books on its purported recipe. Hint: it involved dragon's blood and moonlight, but strip away the fantastical, and you uncover something profound. The stone was likely a metaphor for inner transformation, a tangible representation of humanity's hunger to master nature's secrets. When Isaac Newton, yes, that Newton, spent decades hunting it, he wasn't just chasing gold. He was probing the boundary between matter and spirit, a pursuit that ultimately birthed modern chemistry. Now fly east to Japan, where omamori charms dangle from phone cases and rear-view mirrors like miniature guardians. These silk-wrapped packets aren't ancient Shinto priests craft new ones yearly, but their purpose is timeless. Each contains a written prayer, a sort of spiritual battery that's said to deplete after 12 months. There's one for exam success filled with scholar spirit invocations, another for safe childbirth embroidered with stork motifs, even one for winning at pachinko. The brilliance, they're disposable by design, acknowledging that human needs change with time. Unlike Western talismans that often claim eternal power, omamori embrace impermanence, a reminder that sometimes magic works best with an expiration date. What unites these objects across continents and centuries isn't just their fame, it's their storytelling. The Seal of Solomon speaks to our craving for control in a chaotic world. The Hand of Fatima embodies protection's universal language. The Philosopher's Stone mirrors our endless tinkering with nature's rules, and omamori, their permission slips for hope, renewable as the seasons. These talismans stuck around not because they work in some laboratory sense, but because they answer questions science still can't. How do we feel safe? What makes life meaningful? That's the real enchantment, not in the objects themselves, but in the human dreams they carry forward, generation after generation. The Eye of Horus stares back at you from museum cases and history books, but to the ancient Egyptians, this was no passive decoration. Each curve of its design held mathematical precision, the fragmented sections corresponding to fractions used in their medical recipes. When a physician painted it on a patient's bandages, they weren't just invoking protection, they were activating an ancient formula for wholeness. The left eye symbolized the moon's restorative cycles, while the right embodied the sun's unyielding power. Together, they formed a bridge between earthly healing and celestial order. Even the tears beneath the eye carried meaning, mimicking the markings of a falcon, linking the symbol to Horus's victory over chaos. This wasn't mere mythology, it was a coded system, a blend of astronomy, medicine, and spirituality etched into a single, potent shape. Now twist your gaze to the Celtic Triskelion, those 3 spirals radiating from a central point. At first glance, it's a hypnotic pattern, but dig deeper, and you'll find a triune philosophy etched into every turn. The Celts saw life as a triad: land, sea, and sky, past, present, and future, even the three phases of womanhood as maiden, mother, and crone. Unlike static symbols, the Triskelion's motion suggests perpetual progress, like a wheel that's always turning but never arriving. Modern dancers might recognize this rhythm. The same spiral movements appear in traditional Breton dances, where steps trace the symbol's path as if to physically embody its energy. That's the secret of these designs. They weren't meant to be merely seen, they were meant to be lived. Then there's the Ouroboros, that serpent swallowing its own tail. While it's often reduced to a simple cycle of life metaphor, alchemists like Cleopatra the alchemist, yes, a different Cleopatra, saw it as a furnace. In their labs, the circular snake represented the process of distillation, boiling a substance to purify it, only to condense and repeat the process. Each iteration refined the material, just as the Ouroboros suggested endless self-renewal. Jungian psychologists later adopted it as a symbol of individuation, the psyche's journey to reconcile opposites. But perhaps its most striking modern parallel is in DNA's double helix, where the serpent's eternal loop mirrors the very code of life. So how do we translate these ancient blueprints into modern practice? Start with the spaces you inhabit. The flower of life pattern, when placed in a workspace, can subtly shift the room's energy. Architects even use its proportions in sacred geometry-based designs to enhance focus. Or consider the Hamsa hand. Hanging one near your front door doesn't require mystical belief to function. It serves as a psychological anchor, a reminder of protection every time you cross the threshold. For personal rituals, try this. Hold a Triskelion pendant during meditation, tracing its spirals with your thumb as you contemplate growth, action, and progress. The symbol becomes a tactile guide, steering your thoughts like a compass. The real magic lies in intentionality. When you wear an Eye of Horus amulet, you're not just sporting an antique motif. You're aligning yourself with millennia of human seeking, a chain of wisdom stretching back to scribes who believed symbols could bend reality. That's the thread connecting us to those ancient minds, not superstition, but the recognition that certain shapes and patterns resonate deeper than others. Whether it's the Fibonacci sequence hidden in Hindu temple carvings or the labyrinth designs that calm hospital patients today, these symbols endure because they speak a primal language. One that doesn't need translation, just attention. Ancient talismans never left the workshop in their off state. They required activation, a sacred spark to transform them from mere objects into vessels of power. Picture an Egyptian priest in the dim glow of an oil lamp, murmuring incantations as Sirius, the Nile's herald star, rises over the horizon. The timing wasn't poetic, it was practical. Just as farmers plant seeds with the moon's phases, these rituals synced with cosmic rhythms, harnessing celestial currents to charge amulets like spiritual batteries. The Papyrus of Ani spells it out. Carving an Eye of Horus talisman was only step one. Without the proper opening of the mouth ceremony, a ritual echoing the god's animation of statues, it remained inert, a flashlight without batteries. The Norse took a fiercer approach. A Viking seeress might carve the alge's rune onto a piece of antler, then hold it aloft during a thunderstorm, inviting Thor's lightning to bless it. Iron amulets were tempered in ritual fires, their molecular structure altered by heat as chants wove intentions into the metal. This wasn't blind faith, it was physics avant la lettre. Modern metallurgy confirms that heating and quenching change a metal's crystalline lattice. Could these ancients have sensed they were literally restructuring matter to hold energy? Even the saliva used to moisten runes had purpose. Enzymes in saliva react with organic materials, creating subtle electrochemical changes. Coincidence? Or hidden knowledge? Materials were never chosen at random. Tibetan monks still grind powdered meteorite into ritual objects, believing the iron that crossed the cosmos carries unique energy. Science backs this. Meteoric iron contains isotopes rare on Earth, with crystalline patterns formed in zero gravity. Similarly, Roman bulla charms used gold not for vanity, but because its non-reactive properties symbolized incorruptibility, a child's protection literalized in chemistry. When medieval alchemists insisted on living silver mercury for transformational talismans, they mirrored modern discoveries about mercury's unique conductive properties. Every material was a deliberate conductor tuned to specific frequencies, but the true secret lay in the rituals themselves. A Babylonian demon trap wasn't just buried under a doorway. It was activated by a 7-step ceremony involving dates, honey, and whispered appeals to the god Marduk. Modern experiments in cymatics reveal that honey's viscous structure can hold vibrational imprints, while dates' high sugar content creates piezoelectric effects when dried. These weren't arbitrary ingredients, they were a recipe for energy storage. Similarly, Celtic druids charged amulets by exposing them to triple dawn light, a phenomenon physicists now link to UV index fluctuations that alter quartz's electrical properties. Today's research hints at why these methods endured. Studies at Princeton's Pear Lab showed that focused intention can subtly influence random event generators. Japanese scientist Masaru Emoto's controversial water crystal experiments suggested that words and music alter water's molecular arrangement, echoing the ancient belief that chanting over a talisman's consecration water imprinted it with power. Even the Pentagon Stargate program explored remote viewing, acknowledging that consciousness might interact with matter in ways we're only beginning to map. The line between ritual and technology blurs when you consider that our ancestors were essentially programming objects with intent, using ceremonies as activation codes. A medieval grimoire's instruction to bathe the talisman in moonlight for 3 nights parallels modern laser etching. Both are methods of encoding information at the atomic level. Perhaps the old masters weren't magicians, but early engineers of a science we're still rediscovering. Their rituals weren't superstition, they were protocols precise as a lab procedure, designed to boot up these ancient devices and keep them running across centuries. Astrology wasn't just a medieval obsession, it was the original operating system for talisman creation, a celestial blueprint for channeling cosmic energy. Imagine a 14th century sage hunched over a silver disc, waiting for the precise moment when Jupiter crests above the horizon. That wasn't superstition, it was precision engineering. Each planet ruled specific energies: Saturn for discipline, Venus for love, Mercury for intellect, and crafting a talisman under their dominion was like tuning a radio to the right frequency. The Picatrix, a grimoire so influential it crossed from Arabic to European magic, laid out exact recipes: carve a lion during Leo's ascendancy for courage, or fashion a crescent moon pendant when Luna is full to amplify intuition. These weren't vague suggestions, they were technical manuals for harvesting starlight. But the real genius lay in planetary hours, an ancient timekeeping system that divided days into unequal chunks ruled by rotating celestial bodies. A talisman for wealth made during Jupiter's hour on a Thursday, his sacred day, was believed to soak up prosperity like a sponge. Modern science might scoff, but consider this: astronaut circadian rhythms disrupt in space, proving our biology responds to cosmic cycles. Even crops grow differently under certain lunar phases, so why wouldn't metal and stone absorb these rhythms too? The zodiac, far from just a personality quiz, functioned as a giant talisman itself. Its 12 signs mapped human traits onto celestial patterns, creating a mirror between microcosm and macrocosm. Wear an Aries pendant during Mars retrograde, and you're not just accessorizing, you're syncing with a galactic current. The Renaissance took this further, blending astrology with sacred geometry. Marsilio Ficino, the Medici family's philosopher-magician, designed talismans as star traps, or geometric shapes inscribed with planetary symbols, worn to capture beneficial stellar rays. His designs mirrored the harmonic ratios of musical scales because he believed the planets literally sang. Centuries later, NASA Voyager recordings picked up electromagnetic sounds from Jupiter's magnetosphere vibrations eerily close to Ficino's theorized planetary music. Coincidence or evidence that these old masters were onto something science is just beginning to hear. Today, you don't need a medieval observatory to tap into this wisdom. Try this during a new moon. Place a clear quartz on your windowsill where moonlight will touch it at dawn. Set an intention: clarity, healing, creativity, as if programming a crystal hard drive. It's a stripped-down version of what alchemists called ensouling an object, charging it with purpose. Or notice how farmers still plant root crops during the moon's waning phase, tapping into ancient lunar agriculture. The stars haven't changed, we've just forgotten how to listen, but the language remains, etched into talismans that bridge earth and sky, waiting for hands bold enough to turn their symbols back toward the heavens. The fear of unseen forces isn't just folklore, it's wired into our DNA. Across continents and centuries, humans have crafted talismans to repel invisible dangers, as if we all share some deep, unspoken knowledge of threats beyond the physical. Take the Nazar, that cobalt blue eye amulet common in Turkey and Greece. It doesn't just hang in shops for decoration. It's a spiritual radar, believed to absorb and neutralize envious glances before they manifest as misfortune. Halfway across the world, the Ainu people of Japan carved wooden bears called ikupasai, not as toys but as guardians against wandering spirits. And in the American Southwest, Navajo warriors wore jet-black arrowhead amulets, believing the stone could deflect curses as effectively as it deflected arrows. These weren't just regional superstitions, they were parallel inventions, like different cultures independently discovering fire. What's fascinating is how these protective talismans often mimic nature's own defenses. The evil eye amulet mirrors the way some animals evolve eye-shaped markings to startle predators. The dreamcatcher's web echoes spider silk, nature's original barrier against airborne threats. Even the Roman fascinum, a phallic charm hung in doorways, borrowed its shape from sea creatures like limpets, whose ironclad grip repels invaders. This wasn't coincidence, it was observation. Ancient artisans noticed that certain forms in nature provided protection, then replicated them in miniature, as if distilling the essence of survival into wearable symbols. But did these talismans work? Science offers intriguing clues. Studies on the placebo effect show that belief can trigger measurable physiological changes, lower stress hormones, heightened pain thresholds. A person clutching a protective amulet might literally alter their body chemistry, projecting confidence that deters real-world threats. Meanwhile, quantum physics dances around ideas of observer effects, where intention could influence material reality. Whether through psychology or some undiscovered energy dynamic, these objects functioned as spiritual armor, their power amplified by centuries of collective belief. Modern life hasn't erased this instinct, we've just rebranded it. That lucky pen you use for job interviews, it's a talisman. The baseball cap your team always wins in. Same principle. Even cybersecurity borrows the language of protection with firewalls and shields, digital amulets for the information age. The mediums change, but the message remains. Humans will always seek ways to guard against the unseen, whether it's malevolent spirits or bad luck. And perhaps that's the real magic, not in the objects themselves, but in our unshakable drive to feel safe in a universe full of mysteries. Heart-shaped lead tablets, unearthed from the ruins of Pompeii, tell a story more intimate than any love letter. Scratched with lovers' names and pierced with nails, these ancient cursed tablets weren't just wishes, they were spiritual contracts, binding desire into metal with the same urgency we now pour into dating app bios. Across the Mediterranean, Greek women tucked terracotta figurines of Aphrodite beneath their mattresses, their curves polished smooth from generations of hopeful hands. But here's what modern romantics miss. These weren't passive charms. A Pompeii tablet discovered in 2019 explicitly called upon the goddess Venus to burn the heart of a resistant lover, proof that ancient love magic wasn't about gentle attraction but irresistible alchemy. The Sheila Nogig carvings grinning from medieval churches reveal an even bolder truth. These bold, spread-legged fertility figures weren't hidden in shadows. They glared down from sacred archways, their exaggerated anatomy shouting what Victorian scholars later whispered about. Ireland's National Museum holds one clutching her vulva like a sacred door, not obscene, but sacramental. Archaeologists now recognize these as remnants of pre-Christian birth rituals, where stone midwives blessed pregnancies long before medicine could. Compare that to the Japanese Jizo statues wrapped in red bibs, each one representing a child lost in miscarriage or stillbirth. The common thread, an unflinching acknowledgement that love and fertility talismans weren't just about creation, but the raw, messy spectrum of longing and loss. Modern manifestation coaches would nod in recognition at the ancient, binding love spell recipe from Egypt's Hellenistic period. A 2,000-year-old papyrus instructs seekers to write their beloved's name on a bay leaf, burn it at midnight during Venus hour, then scatter the ashes where their crush would walk. Sound familiar? It's the great-grandparent of today's vision boards and affirmation journals. Neuroscience offers a clue why these methods persist. When we physically enact our desires, whether carving a name or lighting a candle, the brain's motor cortex reinforces the intention, making abstract wishes feel tangibly possible. The bay leaf wasn't magic, it was a neurological trigger, a focusing tool for the most powerful talisman of all, the human mind. Perhaps the most poignant love talismans are the simplest. In Scandinavia, brides once carried iron troll crosses shaped like swirling suns, not just for protection, but because iron was believed to hold memory. Every nail in a family's roof, every plowshare that turned fertile soil, was folded into those pendants, a metaphor for how love builds on the labor of those who came before. Meanwhile, in West Africa, Akan marriage beads told stories through colors and patterns, each combination encoding advice for the couple: blue for patience, gold for prosperity, black for ancestral wisdom. Wearable relationship manuals passed through generations. Today's engagement rings inherit this legacy, but with a crucial difference. Where ancient talismans acknowledged love's complexities, lust, jealousy, grief, modern symbols often polish romance into flawless diamonds. Maybe we've lost something by sanitizing these emblems. The next time you see a heart charm or fertility symbol, look past its surface. These weren't just pretty trinkets, but battle-tested tools forged in the fires of human vulnerability, proof that across millennia, we've always sought ways to say the unsayable, to hold what can't be held, to make tangible the most intangible force on earth. Those 3 feng shui coins tied together with red string you've seen dangling in shop doorways, they're not just a lucky charm, they're a financial philosophy cast in bronze. Each coin represents heaven, earth, and humanity in perfect balance, with a square hole at their center symbolizing stability amid circulation, the red thread binding them. That's the lifeblood of connection, reminding us that wealth flows through relationships as much as through markets. This isn't just symbolism, it's practical economics in miniature. Chinese merchants during the Han Dynasty didn't hang these coins to magically attract gold. They did it to reinforce a mindset where commerce served harmony rather than greed. Now consider the cornucopia, that overflowing horn from Greek myths. Its origin story is telling. It wasn't forged in a treasury but torn from the earth itself, gifted by a river god to the nymph Amalthea who nursed Zeus. The lesson: abundance springs from nurturing, not hoarding. Renaissance paintings often depicted it spilling not just fruits but tools, books, and musical instruments, a vision of prosperity that included culture and innovation. Modern financial advisors echo this when they preach diversified portfolios, but the ancients encoded it in symbols centuries ago, understanding that true wealth is multidimensional. Then there's the caduceus, that winged staff entwined with serpents now stamped on medical badges. Before it healed bodies, it guarded merchants. Hermes, the fleet-footed god of commerce, carried it as he moved between worlds, making it the ultimate emblem of fluid exchange. The serpent's dance mirrors the natural rise and fall of markets, while the wings suggest wealth must occasionally transcend materialism. Even the Norse understood this duality. Freya's golden boar, Gullinbursti, had bristles that glowed like sunlight, a radiant reminder that prosperity grows when rooted in fertile ground, whether soil or society. So how do we translate these symbols into modern practice? Start with their shared principle: circulation. Feng Shui coins only work when hung where money moves: entryways, cash registers, wallets. Try this: place 3 actual coins in your wallet, not as magic but as a tactile reminder that money is energy meant to flow. The cornucopia teaches abundance through generosity. Donate unused items and watch how space creates opportunity. As for the caduceus, its snakes whisper that markets, like living things, have rhythms. Invest during downturns as naturally as farmers plant in winter, trusting in cyclical renewal. The deepest secret these talismans share isn't about getting rich, it's about redefining richness. A Viking burying a Freya amulet in his field wasn't just praying for crops, he was aligning with the truth that wealth comes from stewardship. When you hold one of these symbols, you're holding centuries of hard-won wisdom. That fortunes rise when we see ourselves as conduits, not containers. Perhaps that's why they endure, not because they magically attract gold, but because they remind us that the real alchemy has always been in our hands. Before scalpels or syringes, there were symbols carved, painted, and worn as armor against illness. The rod of Asclepius, that serpent-twined staff still etched on ambulances today, wasn't just a logo to the ancient Greeks. It was a living prescription. Hippocrates himself likely invoked Asclepius in healing rituals where patients slept in temple sanctuaries, believing the god serpent would visit their dreams with cures. Modern medicine dismisses this as superstition, until you learn that some species of healing temple snakes actually secreted antimicrobial substances through their skin, a biological fact that might explain their sacred reputation. Tibetan healing mandalas take this further. These intricate sand paintings aren't just art, they're energy maps. Monks spend days aligning colored grains to mirror the human body's subtle energy channels, then ritually destroy them to teach impermanence. But the act of creation itself holds power. Studies show that focused group meditation, like that practiced during mandala construction, can synchronize participants' brainwaves, a phenomenon now explored in trauma therapy. When a cancer patient in Kathmandu sits within a freshly drawn mandala's geometric embrace, they're not just seeking spiritual comfort, they're plugging into an ancient protocol for neural realignment. Crystals amplify this principle. Roman soldiers carried hematite into battle, not for its metallic sheen but because powdered, it staunched bleeding, a fact modern science confirms due to its iron oxide content. Medieval European plague amulets often held amber, which releases succinic acid now known to boost immunity. Even today, surgeons use sapphire-tipped scalpels for precision, echoing the ancient belief in gemstone conductivity. The difference: we've traded incantations for ionizing radiation, but the underlying idea remains. Certain materials interact with living systems in measurable ways. Sound therapy reveals another layer. Aboriginal healers used didgeridoo's vibrations to realign bones, a practice dismissed as primitive until researchers found low-frequency sound can stimulate osteoblast activity. Similarly, the Sanskrit Aum chant, when visualized as a mandala in tantric traditions, matches the exact frequency range shown to reduce cortisol levels. These aren't coincidences, they're evidence of pre-technological science, where symbols and sounds served as delivery systems for biological effects we're only now quantifying with EEGs and spectrograms. Perhaps the most provocative clue lies in light. Egyptian priests treated patients with colored gemstone lenses, filtering sunlight into specific healing wavelengths. Modern phototherapy for neonatal jaundice or seasonal depression proves they weren't wrong, just ahead of their tools. When you hold a centuries-old amethyst pendant against your forehead during a migraine, you're not just following folklore. You're participating in an unbroken chain of biohacking, one where symbols act as bridges between cellular processes and conscious intention. This raises a tantalizing question. Did ancient healers grasp principles modern medicine is still uncovering? The turmeric-stained hands of Ayurvedic physicians predated anti-inflammatory drug research by millennia. Acupuncture maps of Chi pathways eerily anticipate neural networks. Maybe these talismans weren't substitutes for medicine, but its first language, a visual and tactile code for forces we now measure in labs. To dismiss them as mere placebo is to ignore the fact that the placebo effect itself is proof belief can alter biology. And that might be the most potent healing symbol of all. An Egyptian cat statue wasn't just decor, it was a conduit to Bastet's divine protection, its arched back frozen in perpetual readiness against unseen threats. Halfway across the globe, a Lakota warrior might wear a wolf tooth pendant not as jewelry, but as a living link to the creature's legendary endurance and pack wisdom. These animal talismans did more than represent traits. They forged bonds between species, blurring the line between human and beast in ways that still stir our collective imagination. Consider the raven amulets of Norse shamans' dark wings carved from jet, worn to channel Odin's far-seeing messenger. Viking lore claimed these birds could traverse all 9 worlds, carrying whispers between gods and mortals. Modern neuroscientists might call this a metaphor for intuition, but to an 8th century seer, slipping a raven talisman around their neck before divination rituals wasn't symbolic. It was practical. They weren't just honoring the bird, they were borrowing its eyes, trading human limitations for avian perspective. The Maori took this concept further with their high Matau fishhook pendants. More than good luck charms for fishermen, these jade carvings embodied the demigod Maui's legendary feat of pulling islands from the sea. Wearing one didn't just promise a full net, it aligned the bearer with creation itself, transforming daily survival into cosmic participation. Contemporary marine biologists would smirk at the notion, until they consider how traditional Polynesian navigators used animal behaviors, the flight paths of terns, the breeding cycles of turtles, as living maps across thousands of ocean miles. Carl Jung called these animal symbols archetypes, universal patterns hardwired into our psyche. His wise old man archetype mirrors the owl's nocturnal wisdom across countless cultures, from Athena's companion in Greece to the Ainu people's owl-shaped prayer sticks. But here's where it gets fascinating. When a Japanese businessman carries a fox kitsune charm for shrewd dealings, or a soccer team adopts a wolf mascot for pack mentality, they're not just referencing folklore. They're activating what anthropologists call biomimetic magic, the primal instinct to adopt another creature's strengths through symbolic union. Today's wearable tech might seem worlds apart from bearskin amulets, but the impulse remains identical. Fitness trackers mimic a wolf's relentless pacing. Meditation apps use dolphin frequencies to induce calm. We've swapped talismans for algorithms, yet still seek that animal edge of proof that beneath our digital veneer, we're still those ancient hunters, yearning to run with the stag's speed or strategize with the spider's patience. The next time you're drawn to an animal symbol, whether it's a zodiac sign or a team mascot, ask yourself, is this just a preference, or is some deeper part of you reaching across time, seeking claws, wings, or fins to become more than human? The green lion devouring the sun, it sounds like mythology, but to an alchemist, this vivid symbol was a precise recipe for enlightenment. That emerald-colored beast wasn't just a fantastical creature. It represented vitriol, a substance capable of dissolving gold, mirroring how inner work must first dissolve the ego before transformation can begin. And the sun it consumes, pure consciousness, the light of awareness that emerges once the baser self is stripped away. This wasn't chemistry as we know it. It was a roadmap for the soul, where every flask and furnace stood for a stage of personal rebirth. Take the Ouroboros, that serpent eating its tail, often inked in the margins of medieval alchemical texts. On one level, it's the endless cycle of destruction and renewal, but look closer. Many illustrations show the snake half black, half white, a visual yin-yang of opposing forces. The alchemists called this the uniting of opposites, a process Carl Jung later identified as essential to psychological wholeness. Modern therapy echoes this when it encourages integrating shadow aspects rather than suppressing them. The alchemists didn't have terms like cognitive dissonance, but their symbols mapped the same terrain. Growth requires holding contradictions until they spark insight. Then there's the most famous alchemical duo, the sun and moon, always depicted in tense embrace. Gold and silver, king and queen, sulfur and mercury. At first glance, it's a metaphor for marriage, but the real magic lies in their imbalance. Lunar intuition must temper solar logic. Masculine drive needs feminine receptivity to bear fruit. A 15th century engraving shows them kneeling in a shared bath, their fluids mingling, an image that scandalized the church but perfectly captures alchemy's radical premise. Transformation happens through relationship, not isolation. Today's wellness culture rediscovers this daily, whether in breathwork balancing sympathetic and parasympathetic systems or therapies blending talk and somatic approaches. The Emerald Tablet's cryptic maxim, as above, so below, might sound mystical, but physicists now frame it as fractal theory, patterns repeating across scales from galactic spirals to fingerprints. When alchemists wrote of the microcosm reflecting the macrocosm, they anticipated modern epigenetics, where environment alters gene expression. Their crucibles aimed to mirror cosmic processes in miniature, believing personal change could ripple outward. A surviving manuscript from Prague shows an alchemist's lab arranged as a zodiac wheel, with each station corresponding to planetary energies, less a workspace than a mandala designed to align human effort with celestial timing. So how do we read these symbols today? Start with their core principle. Resistance is part of the formula. The black crow symbolizing decay in early stages of the great work wasn't failure, it was necessary breakdown before breakthrough. Next time you're stuck in a creative or emotional rut, remember the crow, or try this. Sketch the sun and moon on a journal page when facing a dilemma. letting the symbols prompt you to balance instinct with analysis. The real gold alchemists sought wasn't metal, but a way of seeing where every obstacle becomes ingredient, every shadow a hidden teacher. Their symbols endure because they speak to the most human of hungers, not just to change our circumstances, but to be changed by them. A wooden cross dangling from a necklace, a palm-sized yantra inscribed on copper, a scroll of Torah verses tucked into a doorframe, these aren't mere ornaments or artifacts. They're bridges. For millennia, faith traditions have turned abstract beliefs into something you can hold in your hand, wear against your skin, or fix above a threshold. The Christian cross distills an entire theology into two intersecting lines, vertical for the divine reaching down, horizontal for humanity reaching out. A Hindu yantra with its precise geometric lattice isn't just a pretty pattern, it's a concentration of cosmic energy, a visual mantra meant to focus the mind like a laser. These objects don't just represent faith, they make it tactile, turning whispered prayers into something with weight and texture. Take the hamsa, that open-handed amulet found in Kabbalistic and Islamic traditions alike. Its 5 fingers mirror the 5 books of Torah or the pillars of Islam, but its real power lies in its universality. You'll spot it in Jerusalem market stalls, woven into Moroccan rugs, even tattooed on the wrists of celebrities who might not know its depths. What makes it endure? It's more than a good luck charm, it's a portable sanctuary. The eye embedded in its palm isn't just warding off evil, it's a reminder that the divine sees and holds you, even when you feel untethered. Similarly, the Buddhist endless knot, with its labyrinthine loops, isn't just a symbol of eternity. It's a meditative puzzle, a visual koan that quiets the chatter of the mind by giving it a path to follow without end. But why do these sacred objects span faiths and continents? Because humans are creatures of touch. We learn by holding, by tracing shapes with our fingers, by anchoring big ideas in small, physical things. A Muslim prayer bead isn't just a counting tool. The rhythm of its movement sinks breath to devotion, turning repetition into reverence. A Jewish mezuzah on a doorpost isn't just tradition, it transforms a home's entrance into a sacred threshold, a daily reminder that the ordinary can be made holy. Even the Sikh kara, that simple steel bracelet, is more than an identifier. Its unbroken circle presses against the skin during daily tasks, a constant nudge toward integrity in action and thought. The magic of these talismans lies in their duality. They're deeply personal, a rosary worn smooth by generations of a family's prayers, yet universally resonant. A Tibetan prayer wheel and a Catholic monstrance holding the Eucharist seem worlds apart until you recognize their shared purpose, to make the invisible feel present. Science might call this the embodied cognition theory, how physical sensations shape our thinking, but faith has always known it. When a devotee kisses a relic or ties a red string around their wrist, they're not performing empty rituals. They're writing theology on their nervous system, letting their fingers teach their heart what their mind can't yet grasp. Perhaps that's why these objects survive skepticism and secularism. In an age of doubt, they offer something beyond debate, a way to experience belief rather than explain it. A Zen Inso circle, painted in one breath, doesn't argue perfection, it demonstrates it. A Native American medicine bundle with its feathers and stones doesn't just symbolize connection to the earth, it is that connection, gathered and held. These talismans don't demand blind faith, they invite participation. They're less about proving the divine exists than about letting it exist through you, in the press of a thumb against engraved scripture or the weight of a pendant resting over your pulse. So the next time you see someone touch a crucifix to their lips or spin a Buddhist prayer wheel, look closer. They're not just following tradition, they're speaking a language older than words, one where the sacred isn't just believed but held. And in that holding, something shifts, not because the object itself holds power, but because it reminds us where the power truly lies, in the human capacity to reach beyond what we can see, and in doing so, to touch the untouchable. Darkness clings to certain talismans like shadows to a candle flame, not as absence of light, but as its own living presence. The Gosha seals, intricate geometric prisons for 72 demons in medieval grimoires, weren't just forbidden knowledge, they were spiritual locksmithing at its most dangerous. Each angular symbol functioned like a cosmic mugshot, identifying specific entities believed to grant knowledge or power for a price. King Solomon's legend claims he bound these forces into brass vessels, but later magicians dared to etch their sigils into wax discs or metal pendants, walking a razor's edge between control and catastrophe. What's chilling isn't the fantastical demonology, it's the psychological precision behind these designs. The concentric circles, barbed Hebrew lettering, and deliberate asymmetries weren't arbitrary. They were psychological triggers, visual patterns that bypass rational thought to tap primal fears and desires. Consider the Hope Diamond's infamous curse, a legacy of theft, suicide, and ruin supposedly trailing whoever possessed it. Science scoffs at curses, but history whispers otherwise. French gem merchant Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, who plundered the stone from a Hindu temple, allegedly died destitute with wild dogs tearing at his corpse. Subsequent owners faced financial ruin, violent deaths, even the guillotine. Coincidence, perhaps? But when a symbol becomes saturated with generations of dread, when every whispered story layers it with heavier psychic weight, does it eventually become the thing it's feared to be? Modern psychologists might call this the nocebo effect, the dark twin of the placebo response, where expectation of harm manifests as actual suffering. The Dybbuk box takes this further, a wine cabinet allegedly housing a malicious Jewish spirit, its modern legend fueled by eBay listings and horror films. Owners report nightmares, health failures, even apparitions. Paranormal investigators dismiss it as hoax, yet the box's real power lies in its narrative contagion. Like the viral chain letters of the digital age, it weaponizes the human tendency to anthropize objects, to project consciousness where none exists. The box isn't haunted, we haunt ourselves through it, turning walnut and glass into a mirror for our deepest terrors. Yet these objects fascinate precisely because they expose a universal truth. Symbols amplify whatever we pour into them. The same hand that carves a healing rune can etch a curse tablet. Roman-era lead sheets discovered in Bath, England, bear messages like, "May he who stole my cloak choke on blood." Modern voodoo dolls, often misrepresented as tools of vengeance, originated as healing effigies in West African traditions. The difference between blessing and hex lies not in the materials, but in the intention behind them. A Tibetan Furba dagger ritually stabs not flesh, but ignorance. A Sicilian Malocchio charm deflects envy rather than projecting it. This duality forces a reckoning. How does one wield such power ethically? Indigenous traditions offer clues. Navajo sand painters destroy their intricate healing mandalas after use, preventing sacred knowledge from becoming a trophy. Japanese Ofuda talismans are ritually burned annually, renewing their energy. These practices acknowledge that symbols, like fire, require containment. Perhaps that's why forbidden grimoires warned against casual dabbling, not because demons lurk in ink and parchment, but because ungrounded curiosity can unleash forces within the psyche that dwarf any mythical entity. The most profound lesson these dark talismans teach isn't about supernatural danger, it's about accountability. When we etch a symbol or consecrate an object, we're not just shaping metal or wood, we're shaping perception, ours and others. The Hope Diamond's curse thrives because we keep retelling it. The Dybbuk box chills because we lean in to hear its story. Power doesn't reside in the talisman itself, but in the human hands that hold it, and the minds that choose whether to invoke light or shadow. That's the true forbidden knowledge. Every symbol is a blank page, waiting for us to write its meaning with our actions. That worn-out concert tee you refuse to throw away. The keychain dangling from your backpack that survived 3 countries. These aren't just objects, they're modern talismans, charged with memories and meaning through sheer repetition. Athletes lacing their left shoe first, musicians wearing the same socks for every performance. These rituals mirror ancient practices where every action was a deliberate dialogue with the unseen. The jersey becomes a sacred garment, the pre-game routine a secular liturgy. Even Silicon Valley hasn't escaped this pull. Tech giants architect logos with golden ratios and subliminal shapes, understanding that a well-designed symbol can inspire devotion as potent as any relic. Take the humble 4-leaf clover emoji. It's the digital age successor to pressed botanicals carried in medieval pouches, now shared across screens to transmit hope. Or consider the lucky pen phenomenon. Studies show students perform better on tests when using familiar writing tools, not because the pen holds magic, but because it anchors the mind to past successes. This reveals the mechanism behind all talismans. They're psychological touchstones, physical manifestations of the stories we tell ourselves. The ancient Egyptian scarab and today's workout playlist serve identical purposes, one carved from stone, the other curated in an app, both engineered to trigger a state of readiness. Corporate branding proves how deeply this instinct runs. The Starbucks siren isn't just a logo, it's a contemporary siren song, her twin tails echoing Mesopotamian fertility, symbols rebranded for latte culture. Apple's bitten fruit nods to forbidden knowledge, Nike's swoosh mimics Wingate victory. These aren't accidents but calculated invocations of archetypes. Even cryptocurrency leans into mysticism, with Bitcoin's cryptic creator Satoshi Nakamoto functioning as a digital age hermetic sage, and blockchain wallets guarded by seed phrases that read like incantations. The tools change, the human craving for symbolic resonance doesn't. So how do we harness this consciously? Start by auditing your personal symbology. That fitness tracker counting your steps, it's a rune for discipline. The family photo on your desk, a household god of connection. The difference between passive possession and active talisman lies in acknowledgement. When you recognize an object's symbolic weight, you begin collaborating with it. Try this next time you reach for a lucky item. Pause and articulate what it represents. Is your grandfather's watch a token of perseverance? Your gardening gloves are packed with growth. Naming the connection activates it, transforming random stuff into a toolkit for intentional living. The magic isn't in the materials but in the meaning we layer onto them. A medieval knight's sanctified sword and a modern entrepreneur's favorite notebook operate on the same principle. Both are blank slates until infused with purpose. The real alchemy happens when we move from superstition to strategy, choosing symbols not out of habit, but as mirrors for who we aspire to become. That's the thread connecting cathedral reliquaries and sneakerhead culture, the belief that objects can be bridges between our present selves and our potential. And in a world of disposable trends, that's perhaps the most radical heirloom of all, the power to consecrate the ordinary into something sacred. Choosing a talisman isn't like picking out a new phone case. It's more like recognizing an old friend you've never met. That strange familiarity when your fingers brush against a particular stone in a shop, the way your gaze lingers on a symbol you can't explain, these aren't accidents. Carl Jung called it synchronicity, those meaningful coincidences that whisper when logic shouts. Maybe you keep stumbling upon owl imagery right as you're starting university, or find yourself doodling spirals during a career transition. These patterns are clues written in the language of intuition, hinting at what your subconscious already knows you need. Materials carry their own ancient conversations. A lump of raw hematite might feel like a cooling balm to someone overwhelmed by stress, while another person reaches instinctively for the electric tingle of clear quartz. There's science beneath the mysticism. Copper's conductivity isn't just for wires. Ayurvedic medicine has used it for centuries to balance energies. Obsidian's volcanic birth gives it a gravity that can literally ground you. Walk barefoot on black sand beaches, and you'll feel what ancient Hawaiians knew instinctively. But forget textbook correspondences. The real test happens in your palm. Close your eyes and feel. Does it grow warm or heavy? Does your breathing slow or sharpen? Your nervous system often knows before your mind catches up. Intent transforms an object into a talisman. A simple silver ring becomes a courage anchor when worn during your first solo trip. A seashell from a transformative beach vacation morphs into a creativity trigger when placed on your desk. This is why mass-produced spiritual jewelry often falls flat. It lacks the fingerprint of personal history. The Viking who carved a Thor's hammer amulet after surviving a storm didn't choose it from a catalogue. He forged a pact with the symbol through lived experience. Your talisman should be equally earned, whether through struggle, epiphany, or quiet persistence. Testing potential talismans is both art and experiment. Try sleeping with a candidate object under your pillow. Dreams have been humanity's oldest feedback mechanism for symbolic resonance. Carry different stones in separate pockets for a week and journal their subtle influences. Watch for signs. Does one keep ending up in your dominant hand, falling out at significant moments? Ancient diviners read animal entrails. We can read these smaller, gentler omens. The moment of recognition is unmistakable. Celtic legends speak of singing stones that chime for their true owners. You might not hear literal music, but there's a click of rightness when you hold your talisman, like tuning a radio to a suddenly clear station. This is why forced symbolism fails. No amount of convincing can manufacture that visceral yes. When a 12-year-old Anne Frank pasted movie star photos on her diary, she wasn't following any tradition. Yet those faces became talismans of hope in the annex, proving that the most powerful symbols aren't found, they find us precisely when we're ready to listen. Cleansing your talisman isn't just about wiping away dust, it's a reset, a way to clear any lingering energies before imprinting your own. For centuries, salt has been the go-to purifier, not just for its preservative qualities, but because its crystalline structure acts like a spiritual eraser. Submerge a stone in salt water overnight, and you're tapping into the same principle that made ocean water sacred to the Greeks and Hawaiians alike, but metals. They sing under moonlight. Silver and copper especially respond to lunar cycles, their atomic structures subtly altered by the moon's pull, much like tides. If you've ever left a silver ring on the windowsill and noticed it feels different by dawn, you've already experienced this ancient hack firsthand. Now, the real magic begins when you hold the cleansed object and define its purpose. This isn't about vague wishes, it's precision work. Picture a medieval scribe illuminating a manuscript. Every stroke of gold leaf was deliberate. Your intention should be just as focused. Wrap your fingers around the talisman and imagine your goal not as a distant dream, but as a living current flowing through your fingertips into the object. Some whisper mantras like the Sanskrit Am for unity or the Celtic I am for empowerment, because sound vibrations anchor thoughts in physical form. Others borrow from Japanese kotodama, the belief that words carry spirit. Speak your intention aloud, and you're weaving it into the air itself. Moon phases add another layer of nuance. A new moon charge is like planting a seed in fertile soil, ideal for fresh starts like a job hunt or creative project. Full moon charging, on the other hand, works like a spiritual amplifier, cranking up the volume on existing energies. Historical grimoires are specific about timing. Renaissance astrologers would wait until the moon crossed certain constellations before consecrating talismans, aligning them with planetary energies. You don't need an antique astrolabe to harness this, just a moon phase app and 20 minutes of focused attention. But how do you know it's working? Testing a talisman isn't about waiting for lightning strikes, it's about noticing subtle shifts. Carry it with you for a week and journal any synchronicities. Does your new obsidian pendant coincide with fewer anxiety spikes? Does the citrine in your wallet seem to nudge unexpected opportunities your way? Ancient diviners used pendulums or candle flames to gauge an object's energy. Modern practitioners might track mood apps or meditation depth. The key is correlation, not instant miracles. For those who crave a deeper bond, try sleep programming. Place your talisman under your pillow for 3 nights, a technique borrowed from both ancient Egyptian dream healers and modern neurology. During REM sleep, your subconscious is most receptive to symbolic input. If you wake with vivid dreams or a heightened sense of connection to the object, it's a sign the bond is taking root. The final test, let go. Leave your talisman in a public space briefly, a cafe table, a park bench. If you feel a tug of absence, a need to retrieve it, that's the energy dialogue in action. Tibetan monks would say the object has become a 10, a vessel holding blessings. Scientists might call it conditioned response. Either way, the result is the same, a partnership between you and the symbol, ready to face the world's currents together. A charged talisman doesn't announce its presence with fireworks, it speaks in whispers. The first sign often comes in dreams, where symbols from your pendant or stone might reappear woven into stories your subconscious is telling. You might wake with fragments of visions that linger like smoke, or notice recurring numbers and patterns in your daily life. A street address matching your talisman's inscription, a song lyric echoing its purpose. These aren't coincidences, they're breadcrumbs left by a mind suddenly more attuned to possibilities. Pay attention to physical sensations too, that sudden warmth pulsing through a cool piece of jade in your pocket, or the way a brass pendant seems heavier during moments of decision. Your body's response can be the most honest gauge of energy at work, but don't just wait for flashes of revelation. Track the subtler currents. Carry your talisman for a week and jot down every unusual encounter. The job offer that appears after wearing a citrine bracelet, the stranger who mentions your grandmother's favorite flower while you clutch her vintage locket. Even skeptics can't deny the placebo effect's power. Studies show that perceived lucky charms boost performance in everything from golf swings to memory tests. The talisman isn't magically altering reality. It's sharpening your focus like a lens pulling blurred edges into clarity. Yet sometimes silence speaks loudest. If weeks pass without a flicker of resonance, no tingles, no meaningful dreams, no synchronicities, it's not failure. It's feedback. Just as a key won't turn in the wrong lock, certain symbols only activate when paired with the right intention. Revisit your choice. Does the imagery truly resonate, or did you force it because a book said it should work? A Viking warrior wouldn't carry a love rune into battle. Mismatched energy creates static, not synergy. This dance with talismans walks a fine line between empowerment and dependency. There's a danger in outsourcing all agency to an object expecting a hunk of metal to single-handedly fix finances or heal heartache. Ancient traditions understood this balance. Japanese omamori charms are ritually burned after a year, a reminder that protection must be continually renewed from within. Tibetan prayer beads wear down with use, symbolizing how spiritual growth requires active participation, not passive possession. The healthiest relationship with a talisman mirrors tending a garden. You plant the seed of intention, water it with attention, but never demand the rose bloom overnight. When it does, you don't credit the soil alone, you honor the symbiosis. That's the secret the old masters knew. The real magic was never in the object, but in the conversation it sparked between your inner world and the vast, humming universe beyond. Talismans are more than personal tools, they're conduits of energy, and like any power source, they demand respect. History is littered with cautionary tales of those who wielded symbols recklessly. Take the infamous curse of the pharaohs, where the desecration of Tutankhamun's tomb was blamed for a string of deaths. Whether you believe in curses or not, the pattern is revealing. Cultures worldwide have long understood that tampering with sacred objects carries consequences. The Maori tradition of taonga, for example, treats carved pendants as living entities passed down generations, never sold, only gifted. To commodify them is to sever their spiritual lineage, draining their potency. This isn't just tradition, it's a blueprint for ethical engagement with symbolic power. Manipulation is where the line blurs darkest. Medieval love spells etched onto lead tablets often demanded specific outcomes. Make her burn with desire for me, as if love could be commanded like a servant. Modern iterations exist, from social media manifestation trends to binding rituals shared online. But energy operates like a boomerang. What you send out returns amplified. Tibetan Buddhists describe this as the law of karma, while physicists might call it Newton's third law applied to consciousness. Either way, the principle holds. Using talismans to control others ultimately magnetizes chaos back to the caster. Yet intention isn't always black and white. Consider the gray area of competitive talismans, the athlete's pre-game ritual, or the entrepreneur's lucky tie. These aren't about domination but aligning personal energy. The key lies in the why. A Maori warrior's high Matau fishhook pendant wasn't worn to defeat enemies but to honor ancestral strength. Similarly, a student carrying a clear quartz for focus isn't cheating. They're creating a mental anchor. The difference: one seeks to diminish others, the other to elevate the self. Modern practice begs a thorny question. How do we honor traditions without appropriating them? Smudging with white sage, for instance, has become a wellness trend, often stripped from its Native American ceremonial roots. But there's a middle path, learning the stories behind symbols, why the Hindu arm or the Celtic Triskelion matter to their cultures, transforms casual use into conscious respect. It's the difference between wearing a Cherokee bear claw as a fashion statement and understanding its role as a protector in tribal medicine. When we engage with talismans as students rather than consumers, we tap into their true power, not as shortcuts, but as bridges to deeper awareness. The ancients left us more than artifacts, they left roadmaps. Egyptian priests underwent decades of training before handling ankhs or scarabs. Japanese Shinto charms are still consecrated through meticulous rituals. These protocols weren't about gatekeeping, they were safeguards, ensuring symbols weren't reduced to empty gestures. Today, that wisdom translates simply: pause before you charge that crystal or ink that rune. Ask not just what it can do for you, but what you're offering in return. Energy flows where attention goes, and the most potent talismans are those that remind us power isn't taken, it's earned. Talismans have been wrapped in layers of myth over centuries. often portrayed as all-powerful charms capable of bending reality to the wearer's will. But here's the truth no ancient text will sugarcoat: they aren't supernatural shortcuts. No matter how intricately carved your rune or how meticulously charged your crystal, it won't pay your bills, mend a broken relationship, or conjure success from thin air. The real magic lies in what they represent, not what they replace. Consider the Viking berserkers who wore wolf pelts into battle. The pelt didn't transform them into wolves, it sharpened their focus, channeling the animal's ferocity into their own resolve. Similarly, a modern entrepreneur wearing a citrine point isn't bypassing hard work, they're using the stone as a tactile reminder to stay alert to opportunities. This distinction matters because misunderstanding a talisman's role leads to disillusionment. Medieval grimoires are filled with warnings about practitioners who expected symbols to do the heavy lifting. A 14th century alchemist's journal recounts the story of a nobleman who buried a wealth talisman in his field and waited for gold to sprout like wheat. When nothing grew, he declared the art fraudulent, missing the point entirely. The talisman wasn't a replacement for effort. It was a compass, aligning his actions with disciplined investment and trade. Fast forward to today, and you'll find the same pattern. Someone buys a lotus pendant for peace but still fuels daily drama, then wonders why they feel no calmer. Symbols amplify intention, they don't generate it. The danger isn't just wasted hope, it's overlooking real-world solutions. No Hand of Fatima amulet can substitute for a smoke detector in a fire, just as no Celtic knot will repair a neglected friendship without honest conversation. History's most effective talisman users knew this balance. Egyptian physicians paired Eye of Horus charms with precise herbal remedies. Samurai inscribed protective kanji on their swords but spent decades honing their skills. The talisman and the action were partners, not rivals. Modern psychology backs this up. Studies on symbolic self-completion theory show that people who pair meaningful objects with consistent effort report higher satisfaction than those relying on passive luck. Yet this doesn't diminish their power, it clarifies it. Think of a talisman as a spiritual post-it note. A marathon runner might wear a phoenix pendant not because it magically grants endurance, but because when exhaustion hits, touching it recalls their resilience. A student carrying a carved owl isn't bypassing study sessions, they're reinforcing their commitment to wisdom. The talisman's job isn't to act for you, but to bring you back to yourself when distractions arise. This is why cultures from Japan to Jamaica have traditions of retiring old talismans, burning them, or returning them to nature once their purpose is fulfilled. They're tools, not trophies. The beauty of this perspective, it frees you to engage with symbols more authentically. When you stop expecting a piece of metal or stone to solve problems beyond its scope, you start noticing its real gifts. The way a grounding hematite cube slows your breathing during stress, or how a sunflower motif on your desk nudges you toward creativity. These shifts are subtle but profound, like adjusting a microscope's focus until the blur becomes clarity. And that's the perfect mindset for what comes next, crafting a symbol that doesn't just sit in your palm but speaks to it, one you'll shape with your own hands and history. There's something rebellious and deeply personal about designing your own symbol, like rewriting an ancient language only you can fully decipher. Forget dusty grimoires or mass-produced talismans. This is about forging a visual spell from the raw materials of your own desires. The process begins deceptively simple. Take a phrase that captures your intent, like "I am fearless" or "creativity flows through me." Then strip away the vowels and repeating consonants, leaving only the skeletal letters. Now comes the alchemy. Twist those remaining lines into a singular shape, letting curves become shields or jagged edges transform into arrows of ambition. The goal isn't legibility, it's raw energy condensed into form. Chaos magicians of the 1970s refined this method, but its roots stretch further back. Medieval cunning folk would stitch personalized marks into clothing to ward off plague, while Renaissance alchemists designed unique sigils to represent their unpublished discoveries. What makes these symbols potent isn't their complexity, but their intimacy. Their visual fingerprints are replicable because they're born from your subconscious hand. When Austin Osman Spare, the artist and occultist, sketched his alphabet of desire, he wasn't just doodling, he was mapping the contours of his psyche onto paper. Charging your sigil is where intuition takes over. Some burn the paper under moonlight, letting the smoke carry intention upward. Others prefer a visceral approach, pricking a finger to seal the design with blood, an echo of Norse rune masters who stained their carvings with ochre and iron. But the most fascinating step is the final one, forgetting. By deliberately releasing the literal meaning of the phrase you started with, you bypass the skeptical mind and plant the symbol deep in your unconscious. It's like sending a coded message to your future self, one that surfaces when needed most. The beauty of this practice lies in its flexibility. A tattoo artist in Berlin might craft a sigil for resilience, weaving barbed wire motifs into the letters of a loved one's name. A Japanese gardener could design a subtle earth glyph to bury near saplings, believing it channels growth. Even corporations unconsciously mimic this. Think of how Apple's bitten fruit or Nike's swoosh function as modern sigils, imprinting identity through sheer repetition. The difference: your personal symbol isn't selling anything. It's a silent ally, a visual whisper that reminds you of strength you already possess. So why does this work? Neuroscience offers clues. When you create and focus on a unique symbol, you're essentially hacking your brain's pattern recognition system. The symbol becomes a neural shortcut, triggering the emotional state you encoded within it. It's no coincidence that people who design their own mandalas for meditation report deeper focus. The act of creation primes the mind for its intended use. Your sigil isn't magic in the fairy tale sense. It's a psychological lever, a way to access parts of yourself that words alone can't reach. The test of a true sigil isn't how elaborate it looks, but how it feels in your hand. Trace it on your wrist before a job interview, or etch it onto a candle to burn during moments of doubt. Notice when synchronicities arise, the unexpected job offer that arrives after weeks of carrying your prosperity symbol, or the sudden courage that flares when you glimpse your protection sigil tucked in your wallet. These aren't coincidences, they're evidence of a conversation between your conscious goals and the deeper currents of your mind. In the end, crafting your own symbol is an act of quiet defiance, a refusal to accept that only the past holds power. The ancients had their scarabs and crosses. You have this. Whether scribbled on a napkin or forged into a pendant, it's a testament to the most enduring magic of all, the human capacity to shape meaning from the invisible and to wear it as armor or compass as you walk your own uncharted path. Hollywood's obsession with talismans isn't just about flashy props. It's a testament to how deeply these symbols resonate with our collective imagination. Take the One Ring from The Lord of the Rings. Its golden band isn't merely a plot device. It's a mirror for human desire, reflecting how power corrupts even the noblest hearts. The way Frodo's grip tightens around it, the way its whispers drown out reason, it's a masterclass in how talismans become extensions of their bearers, for better or worse. And let's not forget Wonder Woman's lasso of truth, a gleaming cord that compels honesty not through force, but by exposing the raw, unfiltered self. These objects work because they're not just tools, they're metaphors made tangible, carrying weight far beyond their physical form. Superhero lore is practically built on this idea. Captain America's vibranium shield isn't just indestructible metal. It's a symbol of resilience, a promise that even the smallest guy from Brooklyn can stand firm against tyranny. The way it ricochets back to him, that's no accident. It's visual shorthand for karma, for the idea that what you put into the world comes full circle. Even Pokemon's evolution stones tap into ancient alchemy, transforming creatures through elemental forces, much like medieval mystics believed certain stones could unlock hidden potentials. These stories succeed because they borrow from real human history, repackaging age-old beliefs into modern myths. But why do these fictional talismans feel so real? Part of it lies in their design. The Elder Wand from Harry Potter isn't just a stick. Its jagged, bone-like texture screams danger, echoing the crooked wands found in actual European folk magic. The Tesseract from the Marvel Universe pulses with an otherworldly glow, mimicking descriptions of sacred relics said to hum with divine energy. These details aren't arbitrary, they're carefully crafted to trigger our subconscious recognition of power, tapping into the same instincts that made our ancestors revere carved amulets and glowing crystals. The magic of pop culture talismans lies in their duality. They're both fantastical and familiar, bridging the gap between myth and reality. When fans buy replicas of Thor's hammer or the Deathly Hallows necklace, they're not just celebrating a story, they're invoking the qualities those symbols represent: strength, wisdom, or the courage to face the unknown. It's no coincidence that superhero origin stories often involve a talisman: Peter Parker's spider bite, Black Panther's heart-shaped herb. These moments mirror ancient initiation rites, where a symbolic object marked the transition from ordinary to extraordinary. This cultural fascination has a ripple effect. After the Da Vinci Code popularized the idea of hidden symbols, sales of books on sacred geometry skyrocketed. When Game of Thrones featured dragonglass as a weapon against the undead, real-world obsidian sales spiked. These fictional talismans don't just entertain, they reignite curiosity about the real-world practices that inspired them. Suddenly, viewers are researching Norse runes because of Vikings or exploring Japanese omamori after Spirited Away. The lesson here: whether etched onto silver or projected onto a screen, symbols hold power because we give them power. A lightsaber is just a special effect until it becomes Luke Skywalker's beacon of hope. The next time you slip on a necklace with your favorite fandom's emblem, ask yourself, what story are you carrying into the world? Because every talisman, real or imagined, is ultimately a blank slate waiting for you to etch your own meaning into its surface. Quantum physics dances on the edge of magic when it peers into how observation shapes reality. The famous double-slit experiment reveals a startling truth: particles behave differently when being watched, as if consciousness itself nudges them toward form. This observer effect doesn't just challenge textbooks, it whispers that the act of perception might be a creative force. Now, translate that to symbols. If a scientist's gaze can alter electrons, could centuries of collective belief etch power into an amulet's curves? It's not as far-fetched as it sounds. Researchers at Princeton's Pear Lab spent decades documenting how human intention subtly skews random event generators, evidence that mind and matter might converse in a language we're only beginning to decode. Then there's water, the ultimate shapeshifter. Dr. Masaru Emoto's contested yet fascinating experiments showed water crystals forming intricate snowflakes when exposed to words like love, while insults yielded fractured blobs. Critics argue methodology flaws, but the underlying premise mirrors ancient wisdom. Tibetan monks have long blessed water with mantras, and Hawaiian healers chant over springs to restore their mana. Modern studies on structured water reveal its molecular arrangement responds to energy fields, whether from sound, emotion, or perhaps symbols. When you trace a healing sigil over a glass, you're participating in an unbroken tradition that spans from shamanic rituals to cutting-edge biophysics. Psychology weighs in with the placebo effect, that baffling phenomenon where belief alone triggers physiological change. A sugar pill stamped with a drug maker's logo can ease pain as effectively as morphine for some patients. The symbol here, the imprint, becomes a trigger for the body's own pharmacy. Now extrapolate. If a tiny printed mark can unlock healing, what might a personally charged talisman do? Studies on lucky charm behaviors show athletes perform better with ritual objects, not because the objects hold magic, but because they silence doubt and sharpen focus. The symbol becomes a key, turning the lock on latent capacities. Sacred geometry bridges these worlds. Cymatics experiments where sound vibrations arrange sand into mandala-like patterns prove that frequencies create form. The same shapes revered in Islamic tilework and Celtic knots emerge when a violin bow draws music across a metal plate. Ancient builders intuitively knew this, designing cathedrals with proportions that amplified chant harmonics. Today, engineers apply these principles in acoustic architecture, using geometry to shape sound waves for healing spaces. When a medieval mystic carved the seed of life into a pendant, they weren't just doodling. They were harnessing a universal blueprint that science now confirms influences energy flow. The most tantalizing clues come from fringe disciplines. Circadian photography captures energy flares around objects, with some researchers claiming charged talismans emit distinct auras. Meanwhile, studies on plant consciousness show greenery thriving near symbols of growth while withering beside negative imagery. Skeptics dismiss these as pseudoscience, yet the patterns persist across cultures and epochs. A Babylonian clay tablet and a modern EG both hint at the same possibility, that symbols act as antennas, tuning consciousness to specific frequencies. So where does this leave us? Science hasn't yet proven talismans work in the fantasy sense, but it's uncovering mechanisms that ancient artisans might have sensed empirically. Whether through quantum entanglement, neural priming, or vibrational resonance, the gap between symbol and substance grows thinner with each discovery. Perhaps the deepest truth lies in synthesis, not choosing between mysticism and materialism, but recognizing that the oldest symbols endure because they speak to something in us that knows, long before labs confirm it, that reality is far more malleable than it seems. Global revival of talismans isn't some niche spiritual trend, it's a cultural reset hiding in plain sight. Scroll through any social feed, and you'll spot rune tattoos peeking from under designer sleeves, mindfulness apps using mandala timers, even luxury brands embedding protective eyes in handbag linings. This isn't just aesthetics, it's a collective craving for anchors in a world that feels increasingly untethered. After the pandemic's chaos, economic roller coasters, and digital overload, people aren't reaching for these symbols out of blind faith. They're assembling toolkits for psychological resilience. A Gen Z barrister with a Viking compass pendant and a CEO meditating with a crystal pyramid might seem worlds apart, but they're both participating in the same instinctual shift, using ancient visual languages to navigate modern uncertainty. The digital age has turbocharged this revival, transforming localized traditions into global conversations. TikTok's #WitchTok community dissects the difference between Celtic knots and Norse runes with academic rigor, while Instagram artists blend Maori Koru motifs with cyberpunk aesthetics. Emoji charms, those tiny digital talismans we sprinkle through texts, are the latest hybrid, marrying hieroglyphic simplicity with Silicon Valley's lexicon. A heart emoji isn't just punctuation anymore. It's a micro-amulet, a pixel-sized wish for connection flung across the void. This cross-pollination creates fascinating fusions. Japanese omamori charms now dangle from Brazilian carnival costumes, and Native American dream catchers get reimagined in Scandinavian minimalist design. Critics call it cultural appropriation, but there's another lens. It's proof that symbolic thinking transcends borders, adapting to new contexts like water finding cracks in stone. Corporate culture's embrace of talismans reveals even deeper undercurrents. Google's mindfulness pods feature fractal art proven to reduce stress hormones, while Nike's headquarters incorporates labyrinth walks for creative problem-solving. These aren't just wellness gimmicks, they're acknowledgments that the human brain responds to symbols faster than spreadsheets. A sales team given abundance talismans, polished citrine stones outperformed control groups in a University of London study, not because the stones magically attracted clients, but because they triggered a mindset shift. The stones became placebos for confidence, like a runner's lucky socks or a musician's pre-show ritual. Even the tech world's obsession with manifestation borrows from talismanic principles, turning vision boards into digital age sigils where desires are condensed into Pinterest collages and cryptocurrency wallet passwords. What does this global resurgence signal about our future? Anthropologists point to pattern recognition as humanity's oldest survival skill. Reading animal tracks became reading stars, became reading stock markets. In an era drowning in data, talismans offer compression, complex ideas distilled into visceral forms. A climate activist wearing a Thunberg-inspired Earth pendant isn't just accessorizing, she's carrying a manifesto in metal. The rise of personal sigils, custom symbols designed to represent individual goals, hints at a world where identity itself becomes talismanic, a blend of ancestral wisdom and self-authored meaning. This isn't a rejection of science, but an integration. Quantum physics dances with entanglement, talismans whisper of connection. Neuroscience maps neuroplasticity. Monks have spent millennia shaping minds with mandalas. The revival suggests we're hungry for a third way, one that honors both lab coats and intuition, where a programmer's algorithm and a shaman's chant might be different dialects of the same truth-seeking impulse. The most powerful talismans have always been bridges between earth and sky, past and future, the self and the sublime. As we hurtle into uncharted eras, perhaps these small, sacred objects will keep reminding us of the biggest paradox, that to navigate the unknown, we sometimes need to hold onto something older than time. As we close this exploration of ancient talismans and symbols, it's clear they've never truly been about the objects themselves. They're about the human hands that shaped them, the hearts that believed in them, and the stories they've carried across centuries. That necklace passed down from your grandmother, the lucky coin in your pocket, even the screensaver on your phone that lifts your mood. These are modern threads in an unbroken tapestry of meaning-making. The Egyptian scribe carving an eye of Horus and the barrister sketching a personal sigil on their coffee cup are part of the same lineage, seekers using symbols to navigate life's uncertainties. What makes these emblems endure isn't magic in the fairy tale sense, but something far more profound: their ability to crystallize the intangible. A Viking's hammer pendant wasn't just a weapon in miniature, it was a portable reminder of resilience when storms raged. A medieval pilgrim's scallop shell badge didn't guarantee safe passage, but it anchored their courage when roads grew treacherous. Today's equivalents might be subtler: a fitness tracker's glowing ring closing at midnight, a tattoo that only you know the meaning of, but the mechanism remains identical. These symbols externalize our inner landscapes, turning abstract hopes into something we can touch, wear, or trace with our fingers when doubt creeps in. This is why dismissing talismans as mere superstition misses the point. Neuroscience confirms that physical anchors like a soldier's dog tags or a writer's favorite pen activate the brain's associative networks, triggering focus or calm on demand. When you clutch your great aunt's locket during a job interview, you're not invoking some external force. You're tapping into the neural pathways formed by every memory it holds. The power was inside you all along. The symbol just helps you remember where to look. So as we part ways, here's an invitation. Become an archaeologist of your own life. What unnoticed talismans are already woven into your days? That playlist you turn to for motivation, the worn keychain from a pivotal journey, the doodle in the corner of your notebook that somehow centers you, these are your personal runestones. And if nothing comes to mind, consider crafting one, not because you need an object to manifest change, but because the act of choosing or creating a symbol forces clarity. What quality do you want to invite more of? What story do you want to tell yourself when you glance at your wrist or open your wallet? The most fascinating talismans in history weren't forged in secret chambers. They emerged from lived experience, from moments where ordinary objects became extraordinary through association. Your symbols don't need ancient pedigrees or elaborate rituals to matter. They just need to resonate with your truth. Whether you leave this exploration skeptical or inspired, one thing's certain: you'll never look at the objects around you or the stories they carry quite the same way again. The next chapter of this mystery isn't hidden in dusty artifacts. It's waiting in the palm of your hand, in the choices you make, in the meanings you dare to assign. So what will you carry forward? The answer, like the best symbols, is both beautifully simple and infinitely